Chris Eubank, simply the best or simply misunderstood. In the brutal theater of British boxing, few men have ever been as captivating, as controversial, or as complex as Chris Eubank, a man who called boxing a mug's game, yet ruled it, a fighter who built his legacy on violence, but was forever haunted by it, a champion, a showman, a father, a man shaped by triumph and tragedy. This is the story of Chris Eubank, ORGNS, from London to the Bronx. Born in 1966 in South London, Eubank's early life was anything but glamorous. Raised partly in Jamaica, then returning to tough London neighborhoods, he grew up in hardship. Trouble followed him. School expulsions, street conflicts. Then at 16, he was sent to the South Bronx, New York, one of the toughest places on earth at the time. And that's where everything changed. Inside a boxing gym, he found discipline. Obsession took over. He trained relentlessly, even working as a caretaker just to stay close to the ring. By 18, he was already competing at elite amateur level, winning tournaments and building a reputation. The rise, undefeated and unstoppable. Eubank turned professional in 1985. And for years, he was unstoppable. Win after win. Knockout after knockout. He built a record of 28-0 as a middleweight. But it wasn't just his fighting. It was his persona. The monocle. The aristocratic voice. The confidence bordering on arrogance. He didn't just fight opponents. He psychologically dismantled them. And the British public, they couldn't decide. Do we love him? Or hate him? The WTSON fight, glory and guilt. Then came the fight that would define his life. Against Michael Watson. September 1991. A world title on the line. Watson was winning. Outboxing Eubank. By round 10, Eubank was behind on all scorecards. Then everything changed. A brutal exchange. An uppercut. Eubank surged forward. The fight was stopped in round 12. Eubank had won. But there was no celebration. Moments later, Watson collapsed. He had suffered catastrophic brain injuries. There was no ambulance at ringside. Medical response was delayed. Watson would survive. But his career and life were permanently altered. And Eubank, he carried that night forever. He later said, "I lost my finishing instinct." From that moment on, he stopped chasing knockouts. He boxed differently, more cautious, more measured. A champion, changed by trauma. World champion era. Despite the emotional burden, Eubank dominated. He held WBO world titles at middleweight and super middleweight. For over 5 years, he became one of Britain's biggest sporting stars, defending against top contenders, outlasting heavy hitters. His chin became legendary, his will unbreakable. And then came his greatest rivalry. NIGLBNN, the war that defined an era. Against Nigel Benn, Eubank wasn't just fighting a man. He was fighting an opposite. Benn, raw aggression. Eubank, calculated composure. Their first fight in 1990 was pure violence. Eubank stopped Benn and became a superstar. Their rematch in 1993, Judgment Day, ended in a draw. But together, they ignited a golden age of British boxing. Late career wars. As the years went on, the wars took their toll. He faced Joe Kaltzeg in what Kaltzeg later called his toughest fight. Then brutal clashes with Carl Thompson. In their rematch, Eubank suffered the only stoppage loss of his career. His body had finally reached its limit. After 13 years, 45 wins, 5 losses, 2 draws. The Warrior stepped away. Legacy in British boxing. Chris Eubank wasn't just a champion. He was a cultural phenomenon. He helped bring boxing into the mainstream. He made it theatrical, personal, emotional, ranked among Britain's greatest super middleweights. His fights became must-watch events. But more than anything, he changed how fighters sold themselves. Before social media, Eubank understood branding. Personal tragedy, the death of his son. In 2021, tragedy struck. His son, Sebastian Eubank, died suddenly in Dubai. He was just 29. A heart attack while in the sea. A young father. A rising boxer. Gone. For Eubank, a man who had faced violence his entire life. This was different. This was pain beyond the ring. Fractured relationship with his son. His relationship with his other son, Chris Eubank Jr., has been complicated. Public disagreements. Philosophical differences about boxing. At times, Eubank Sr. even distanced himself from his son's career. Their bond strained, especially after tragedy. Though in recent years, there have been moments of reconciliation. But the tension remains part of the story. A father trying to protect. A son trying to define himself. Life outside the ring. Eubank was never just a boxer. He became a television personality, appearing on reality shows, talk shows, documentaries, always unmistakably himself. Elegant, eccentric, unfiltered. He lived life like a performance. Even his ring walk, vaulting over the ropes, became iconic. And his theme, simply the best, the man behind the mask. But beneath the persona was a deeply reflective man, haunted by Watson, shaped by loss, protective of his family. He once blamed himself for what happened in that ring. A champion, carrying invisible scars. Chris Eubank's story is not just about boxing. It's about identity, responsibility, and consequence. He was adored. He was criticized. He was misunderstood. But one thing is undeniable. Chris Eubank was never ordinary. In a sport built on brutality, he became something else entirely. A legend who never escaped the cost of greatness. Early career opponents, 1985-1989. These were mostly journeymen and lower-tier fighters. Records vary by source. Tim Brown, Kevin McIntyre, Dave Smith, Donnie McCrary, Carlos Santana, Elwood Mackenzie, Fernando Figueroa, Tony McKenzie, Ray Medrano, Noel Quarles, Antonio Rivera, Eddie Mora, George Eli, John Jarvis, Pat Lawler. Rise to contender, 1989-1990. Nigel Benn. Record, 22-1, 21 KOs. Eubank wins by TKO, becomes WBO middleweight champion. Gary Stretch. Record, 29-0. Undefeated challenger. World title era, 1991-1995. Michael Watson, first fight. Record, 25-2. Eubank wins controversial decision. Michael Watson, second fight, tragic bout. Record, 25-2. Watson suffers life-changing injuries. Graciano Roccagini. Record, 23-0 KO artist. Eubank wins, huge upset. Sulani Malinga. Record, 19-3. Tough, durable opponent fought twice. Dan Scommer. Record, 21-1. Ron Essett. Record, 24-1-1. Lindell Holmes. Record, 45-3-3. Former world champion. Henry Wharton. Record, 21. Steve Collins, first fight. Record, 31-2. Steve Collins, second fight. Record, 32-2. Eubank loses both fights. Rivalries and superfights. Nigel Benn, rematch 1993. Record, 42-1-1. Ends in draw, Judgment Day. Late career, 1996-1998. Joe Kaltzeg. Record, 22-0. Future legend, Eubank steps in late, goes distance. Carl Thompson, first fight. Record, 21-4. Carl Thompson, rematch. Record, 22-4. Eubank stopped, only stoppage loss. Summary of opposition quality. Multiple world champions faced. Numerous undefeated opponents. Known for fighting top-tier competition consistently.